Hey friends, welcome to my channel. I'm Cerise and this is story time. Thank you for taking a moment to subscribe, and when this video is done, I hope you click like. It is such a twisted story, like most of the story times. So let's get into it. Alright, this story is about a gentleman. We're going to name him Tom. Tom is a guy who went and traveled all around the world. So he traveled around the world for his job. He speaks a lot of languages, and he decided he was going to retire early. So he came here to the Dominican Republic, right here in Sosua, right here in El Bate. Now, for those of you who don't know, Sosua is located in the north coast of the Dominican Republic in a province by the name of Puerto Plata. Sosua is known as more of a beach town. El Bate is the downtown part of Sosua. All right. So this guy lived not in a residential gated community where a lot of the expats and tourists visit and live, but he lived outside of the community in an area that was more known as a Dominican neighborhood. He spoke very good Spanish. Now, what happened was he decided that he thought he's going to save some money because it's possible to do that. And he picked himself a nice street in El Bate, which I will not say. That rhymed a little bit, didn't it? In El Bate, where I will not say. Anyway, I always got a song in my head, or a rap or a rhyme. That's for another day. This guy decided that he was going to live with the locals, which is a really good idea for those of you who do want to save money and you can speak Spanish and stuff of that nature. Well, this guy, he thought he was better than the others. He really did. He didn't move in with the locals in order to save money and live with them and be with them. He moved there so he could have some of them as more or less personal servants, I would have to say. And maybe you may understand where I'm coming from throughout the story. Okay, so Tom decides that he's going to come here and he's going to live the rest of his life out. And he was doing that. Now, he has a drinking problem. Big time drinking problem, and he would go out to the clubs, karaoke, go have a good time, and then on his way home he'd pick up a woman off the street, take her home and have a good time with her and just have his fun. Well, one day he met a woman that he felt was worthy of keeping around till the next morning. And she was an awesome Dominican woman. She was a little bit older and well known on the streets as someone that helps people. Way back in the day, she used to be a working girl. But these days, she's more of a woman that helps cook in people's villas, and she helps to clean and stuff of that nature, but very well respected. So he started to use her as his go-to girl, so to speak. He didn't want her as a long-term relationship, but he did want her around so she could cook and so she could clean and have his back when he needed her to connect him with people that are doing services that cost less, if you will. He didn't want what is known as the foreigner prices, what are also known as the gringo prices. He wanted to be charged the same price as the locals. So that's what he had her in his back pocket for. It's quite common. And if the two people have an agreement, or if the people that are involved have an agreement, then that's their agreement. I'm not knocking it. All I'm saying is he took it to a whole other level. So now, he would go out drinking all the time, and he would go out doing his thing all the time. And he would often, when he got drunk, he would get home and he would start blaming her about, like, if she happened to be at his house, or if he happened to see her in the street and he'd take her home. So what he would do is he would get home, he'd be all drunked up, and then he would be like, he'd look in his wallet and he'd say, "Where's that 1,000 pesos I had?" 1,000 pesos right now at this time is roughly 20 American bucks, just under 20 American bucks. And he would make, money would go missing, but he would forget that he spent it on certain things. And she would have to remind him, and she would have to say, listen, Tom, remember you spent it on food on the way home? And he'd be like, well, where's the food? And she'd be like, do you remember you gave it to that kid on the street? Or do you remember this, or you remember that? And she would have to remind him what he did with his money, because he was one of those drunks that would just forget everything the next day. Okay, so she dealt with that for a few months, about 6 months, because he did pay her throughout the days. He would give her money so she could feed her grandchildren. She was a young grandmother. And also so she could feed herself, and also so she could, treat herself good. And so one day, he was drunk, and what he would do is, she lived very closely to him, by the way, just down the street. And so what he would do when he'd get home, if he didn't find her on the street on the way home, then when he got into the house, if he was hungry or if he needed something, he would yell out his window for her name. Now, he would call her by her name, and she would answer. I do the same thing. I live here in a little neighborhood called Los Charamicos, and when I need something, and let's say my buddy next door, who is a motor control driver, I will yell out the window. If he doesn't have any minutes on his cell phone and I'm not able to get a hold of him via WhatsApp, I will yell out the window and I will say, hey, and he answers. Everyone yells like that for him when they need his assistance. He's the go-to guy. Nothing romantic on my behalf with him, but that's just the way we do things here. So Tom caught on to that little habit, and that's what he would do when he was drunk. He'd get home. If he didn't see her, he would yell, let's give her a name. Let's call her Anna. So he'd be like, Anna, out the window, and she'd be like, yeah, like, see. And she would go to his house to see what he needed. Now, she didn't mind, because he really didn't need much more than a little romp in the hay, a little bit of food, and a little bit of cleaning. Well, she would rush over. Well, every single time she'd go over, he was always negative, and he would blame her for things. So, one time, for an example, she went over to cook for him with her grandson. Her grandson is 5 years old, and he was just playing with his cars one day on the floor in the kitchen as she was cooking, and Tom could not find 100 pesos that he was looking for. 100 pesos is 2 American bucks. Now, what in the world is this kid gonna go grab 100 pesos for? Nothing. But guess what? Tom still blamed him and said, your grandson must have took my money because I'm not able to find it. I want to pay someone outside for something and I'm not able to find it. Don't bring your grandkid here any longer. Like, that's how he spoke to Anna, little things like that. And Anna wouldn't talk back, because she would just be like, oh, okay, well, you know what? Take the 100 pesos out of the money you're going to pay me today. Right? So she wouldn't argue with him. She knew full well that her grandson wasn't taking anything. But Tom just thought that he was better, and he treated people like garbage. Not only her, but also people on the street. Quite often you will see vendors, and most of them are locals, Haitians and Dominicans. So Dominicans might be walking around, and guys will be selling things for cell phones and chargers for your cell phone, and the women, they walk around with fruit and vegetables. And if they go up to him and they say, oh, here's a fruit, avocado, and he would say, how much is it? And they would tell him, and he'd be like, no, go away, get away. You're trying to rip me off. You're trying to give me a gringo price. Get lost. Now, a lot of us do that here, and including me. If I know that I buy off one main person all the time, I'm going to get a good deal because I'm a loyal customer. Now, if someone else comes up to me because my person is not around that day, and they want to sell me an avocado for 75 pesos, or let's say 100 pesos, which is 2 American bucks, I say no thank you. And they say, okay, 75 pesos. And I say no thank you. I already know it's 50 pesos, and I usually get it from someone else, or I can go to the supermarket in my neighborhood and get it for 25 pesos. And then they try to squabble and, negotiate with me, but I say no. No, thank you. And you have to stand firm when you know that your regular person is not around and you don't want to be ripped off or disrespected. I get that. But you don't speak to people in a manner that is disrespectful. Everyone is trying to make their hustle happen. But Tom never really had the respect for anyone, really. The women of the night, the workers here. He spoke badly even about the locals. Okay, all he would do is go to the bars, drink with a couple of the guys, get drunk, walk home, and like I said, just go home and be drunk in his own space. All right, so Anna, she started to grow very tired of Tom, and she started to disconnect from him a little bit more. So she would put his notifications on silent. She didn't want to service him any longer because he was just mean, and it wasn't worth the money that he was giving her because he was also very cheap. And so she thought to herself, you know what? Dignity at this moment is a lot better than selling her soul for 25 pesos, 50 pesos. She was always hoping that he would respect her, or at certain times give her a little bit more of a tip, a little bit more of a top up, but he never did. He never did realize that she was so valuable to his lifestyle here. So he finally just said to her, once he realized that she was just putting him on the back burner and ghosting him, he was like, forget it, I don't need her. So then he started to just stop calling her, until one day he was on his way home and he was so drunk he didn't even know how he got home. Well, he got into the house, and when he got into the house, he died. That's what he says. He says he died. This is what he said to Anna. But he didn't die. He was just so drunk that maybe his heart stopped for a moment. Hey, no one's negating that. But he said he woke up and he started to breathe. He was like, and he thought he was going to die again. So then all of a sudden, he started to panic, and he realized he didn't know where his wallet was. He didn't know where anything was, his keys or anything. So he started to look around his apartment for his wallet, and he couldn't find it. And he felt at that moment that he was robbed on the street and just couldn't remember because he was so drunk. So who did he call? Anna. He yelled out his window, Anna! And she didn't answer. She heard it, and she could tell that he was drunk by the way he yelled, but she still didn't answer. She thought to herself, she's not going to sacrifice her sleep for him when he's drunk. So she didn't do anything about it. She didn't go to his beck and call. The next morning, she was a little worried. So she went and she knocked on his door. And he answered. And when he answered, he had a towel wrapped around his waist. That was it. And she said, are you okay? And he's like, I don't know. Finally, they got me. And she's like, who got you? And he's like, your people. They finally got me. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, relax, sit down, and tell me. And she could smell a foul smell in the house. She couldn't figure out what the smell was, but it smelled like poo. And she said to him, what is that smell? And he said, go look in the bathroom. And she went into the bathroom and she looked, and there was diarrhea all over the bathroom floor. And she just plugged her nose. She sprayed a little bit of stuff like that was on the counter, and like cologne, and she closed the bathroom door, and she went back out to the living room, and she said, what happened? And he said, it was poison. And she said, what do you mean? And he said, someone must have dropped something in his drink the night before, because they were planning to rob him on his way home. And she said, what do you mean? And he said, someone did something as his wallet was missing. And she said, well, where's your wallet? You know, no one's going to rob you from the bar to the house. Everybody knows you. Everybody likes you. And the ones that don't like you, they wouldn't be bothered with you. They know that you don't carry a lot of money on you and you only take out a certain amount. And he's like, well, then where's the wallet? Tell me. And he said that his passport was like in his wallet. It was like one of those bigger wallets. He said his passport was in his wallet and everything was in there because he went to the Western Union that day. And he said he started to tell Anna, he's like, that day he just happened to have more money on him. And that day he had his passport on him. And that day someone was watching him and they must have said, someone at Western Union must have sent the message to another person, or maybe it was his motor concho that took him to the Western Union. He said someone set him up. And so Anna said, okay, let's just relax. First of all, that smell needs to be cleaned. So first I'm going to clean your bathroom, and then we're going to go around the apartment and look for your wallet. And he said, no, you need to put the word out on the street first that I know who robbed. And she said, okay, maybe nobody robbed you. First you have to look in your apartment. And she knew her people, and she knew the people on her street, and she knew the people from that bar, and she knows that someone at the Western Union is not going to set him up. And she also asked him, who was your motor concho today? Well, yesterday. And he said who his motor concho was. That motor concho wouldn't steal from a store, wouldn't steal from anyone, wouldn't even rob a fly. Wouldn't hurt a fly. And so, sorry, I just paused for the cause, drinking a little bit of coffee here. So she said to him, all right, I'll put the word out on the street. So she was just like, forget it. Why is she going to sit with him all while he's hungover, still drunk pretty much, and, argue with him that they should just look for it in the house first, and why is she going to clean up all his poo? She thought, no way. So she left and she went back home. And when she was at home, she waited for about an hour. And of course, he starts yelling, Anna! And she goes to the door and she's like, okay, yes, Tom. And he's like, did you find anyone? Is anyone saying anything outside? And she's like, no one's saying anything. Now, of course, she didn't spread any word because she knows that if he was robbed, someone would have already spread the word on the street anyway. Someone would have said, hey, Gringo got robbed last night, eh? Because Tom was not the type of person to get robbed, whether he's drunk or straight, sober. He's not the type of person to just be quiet. So she's like, listen, think about yourself. If you got robbed, don't you think you would have screamed at the person robbing you? Don't you think people on the street would have heard you yelling? And he said, no, I remember now, someone blew powder in my face. And then they told me, give me everything you have 15 seconds later. And she said, what are you talking about? And he's like, you know how they do that in other countries. They'll blow powder in your face, and then they'll even take you to your bank machine and get you to take everything out of your bank machine, and you're in a daze. You don't know what's going on. And she's like, I've never heard of that here in my country. I don't know what you're talking about, but whoever did that to you, maybe you should speak to the police if you remember. And he's like, I don't remember who it was. It was just a daze. I don't remember the person's face. I just remember it happening. And she said, okay, well, I don't know. And she's like, let me go ask a few questions outside. So now, believing him, she went out because now he was calm. He wasn't as drunk an hour later. He wasn't, as verbally mouthy. And so she said, okay, let me go ask a few questions outside. So Anna, with the good heart she has, she went outside and she asked a few people, was the Gringo robbed last night? Did you hear anything? Like, and everyone was like, what? No, what are you talking about? No one has time to even talk to him. He's a grouch and he never has any money. Like, he's just a mean person. Why would anyone even say hi to him on the street? He's just seems like he thinks he's better than everyone else. Like, and everyone was saying exactly like what she thought. And so she was like, okay. And then she started to talk to a few of the people and she's like, have you heard about this powder that can be blown in someone's face? And everyone's like, no, never heard of it. One guy said, oh yeah, I heard of it before. I heard of it, but not here. I heard of it in a documentary. I was watching it on YouTube, but that's like in another country, not here. And she's like, okay, all right. So this powder does exist. So she's like, well, she thought she would go back to his house and give him the benefit of the doubt. So she went back and she's like, Tom, listen, nobody heard anything on the street. And I'm sorry that happened to you. How can we help right now? And he's crying and and he still has that towel on him, but he's laying on the couch. And she's like, let me make you something to eat. Let me give you some coffee, some tea. Let me just feed you right now and see if any more memory comes to you. If anything else comes to you. And he says, okay. So she cooks him up some rice and some beans and some salad and some meat. And, it took her maybe about a half an hour to do that. And during that time, he fell asleep. And so she woke him up with a nice plate of food and some tea, and he's eating and he's trying to remember more and more. And he's like, all I remember is just silence. And she's like, okay, when you got home, did you have your wallet? And he's like, no, I'm telling you, I don't remember. All I remember is somebody. And she said, okay, so could you have lost the wallet on the street when you were walking home? And he's like, no, I'm telling you. He's like, I remember putting my wallet on the inside of my shorts because I was thinking to myself, I have more money in it tonight and I have my passport and I wanted to hide it on the inside of my pants, my shorts. Now at this point, she's like, okay, well, there's got to be an explanation behind it. So she's like, do you mind if I just look around the house? And he's like, no, you don't believe me. And she's like, okay, let me just clean the house at least because it stinks real bad. And like, let's just get this cleaned up. And in the meantime, when I'm done, then we'll call the police and bring the police in and you make a report. Tom agreed to do that. So he went back to sleep because, of course, he's hungover. So she decides to clean the bathroom. When she finished cleaning the bathroom, she scoured his whole entire apartment. And guess what? She found his wallet. And now it's a elongated wallet type of wallet because it fits a passport. And she found it underneath his closet. Now, the closets here in the Dominican Republic and the older places, they have built-in closets in the wall, right? Like wood, and it's nailed to the wall. And so you don't necessarily walk into them, but they are like wardrobes, if you will, and they are nailed to the wall. Underneath that wardrobe is sometimes just empty, or sometimes there's like a little piece of wood. Well, his has a little piece of wood, and that little piece of wood is broken. Now, she noticed that it was kind of slanted, so she kicked it open, and it opened up. She kneeled down, and there was his wallet. She thought to herself, this guy must have got in with his paranoid state and put the wallet there, still trying to hide it, and because he was afraid it had more money in it and his passport was in it and he was drunk, so he probably just hid it from people, thinking that he was going to get robbed, and went and then forgot, went to sleep, and then woke up in his panic, when he thought he died. So she opened up the wallet she did not take a cent out of it, not a peso, because of course she wanted to be proud for him, for her people. She wanted to show him that, this is like nothing is touched. So, she went and she woke him up and she said, Tom, look what I found. And he was like, what? Oh my gosh, my wallet. Where did you get it? And she said, come here. And she took him into the bedroom and she showed him where he hid it. Now, he didn't believe her because he didn't remember hiding it. And he said, why would I hide my wallet there? You're lying. She's like, no, seriously, this is where you hid your wallet. Why would I lie to you? Open your wallet. Open it up. Look, your stuff is still there. And he opened it up and he counted his money. And he said, I only spent 2,000 pesos yesterday. There's 5,000 pesos missing. So in other words, 3,000 pesos is gone. Instead of this man thanking her and being happy that at least, only 3,060 bucks, roughly $60 is missing, instead of all the rest of the hundreds that was there, instead of saying thank you for that, he should have been going in his pocket, going in his wallet and giving her at least 1,000 pesos, right? And he went to the bathroom and everything. He knew the bathroom was clean because he's like, I need to use the washroom. And he went into the bathroom and he's like, oh, you cleaned the bathroom? Thank you. That money you took, you can take it for cleaning the bathroom. You can keep it for cleaning the bathroom. That's what he said to her. And she said, no money is missing. And she knew for sure no money was missing because she's the one that found the wallet. And he's like, you're a liar. Get out. That's what he did. And that's what he said. And so she didn't want any more problems. She didn't want any more trouble. And at that point, she knew that when God was telling her weeks before to stay clear of that man, she should have listened. But her good heart is what drove her back to help him. Her good heart is what made her clean that bathroom. Her good heart is what made her look for that wallet, and also the God inside her heart said to her that wallet is in the apartment from the moment she stepped into the apartment. So she left, and that was it. He didn't even say any apology to her or anything like that. And then the next day, he goes out, of course, to the bar, drinking again, and he's on his way home. And, he decides that he's going to stop for some food. And a person says to him, he says to the person, now he went to a place called Copacabana. Okay, Copacabana here is like it's like an after hours where you can go and you can buy food, and it's really good food, and it's just off Alio Martinez. Okay, and really good soup with rice and good service and good people, good music. So he went there, and they know him there. They know he's a drunk, but usually he's there with Anna, or Anna will go for him or whatever because he's too drunk to go. Well, this night he decided to go on his own. He didn't even he was just so drunk he should have just went home. So anyway, he's in Copacabana and he's chilling out and he's relaxing, and he goes to pay for his food, and they told him the price. Now he went to pay for his beer as well, and they told him the price. Now it was a little bit more expensive than what he usually pays at the local watering hole that he goes to. And also it was a little bit more, I won't even say expensive, okay? Because Copacabana is not expensive. It's real good food at a real good price, right? But it was like maybe 25 pesos more for the food, 50 pesos more than what he's used to paying at the local Commodore Cafe. Okay, and so he's like, why is this more expensive? You're charging me gringo prices. Again, while he's drunk, he doesn't want to pay gringo prices, foreigner prices. And the server said, that's the price. And he's like, no, I'm not paying it. And she's like, okay. So she took the food back. And he's like, give me my food. And she's like, do you want the food? And she was quite patient with him. She's like, do you want the food? Because if you want the food, you have to pay the price. Like, the price has not changed. This is the price we always charge here. And he's like, you're more expensive than the restaurant down the street. And she's like, okay, well, sorry about that, but all right, do you want the food? So he took the food, snatched the bag out of her hand, handed her the money, and he walked out. He got on the motor concho that was outside, not his regular motor concho, but a different one. And he's like, take me home. And the motor concho said, where are you going? And he's like, blah, blah, blah. And he said where he lived. And the motor concho said, okay, 100 pesos. That's $2. And Tom's like, it's only 50 pesos from here to my house. And the motor concho said, well, yeah, it's nighttime, right? And Tom's like, nighttime? What are you talking about? It's the same distance. There's lights on the road. The motor concho said, do you want to take the motor concho? Do you want to take my motor concho or not? Because I have someone else over there that's going to pay. And this motor concho was not ripping him off. It is true. At nighttime, you do pay more generally. And especially if it's not your regular motor concho. And especially if you are a goof. You know, like, of course, no motor concho is going to give you a good deal. And especially coming out of Copacabana where it's quite a lot of traffic. And so he said to Tom, get off my bike. Get off. And Tom was like, who do you think you are? And the motor concho said, get off my bike. And Tom refused to get off. So then the motor concho leaned off the bike and Tom kind of stumbled off. And Tom, was like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he started to walk home. As he walked home, he was stumbling, he was falling and everything. And then he tripped in a crack in the road. He fell and he banged his head. The food went falling and it just, it was awful. But the food didn't break open. Like the bag didn't break open. But, there was a guy walking down the street and he helped Tom. He's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And he picked up the food and he grabbed Tom's arm, and Tom grabbed the bag out of the man's hand and said, give me my food. You guys are all the same here. And the guy's like, whoa, sir, do you need help getting home? And Tom's like, no. Tom's head was bleeding. He was in a hot mess. Oh, he was a hot mess. And then everyone just let him go. Everyone was just like, whatever. Like, you are a mess. Tom went home. He got himself home somehow. He got home, and of course, he opens his window. Anna! Now, Anna, being worried for him, because by this point she had already heard on the street that he fell and hurt himself. You see, Dominicans, they worry about gringos, about foreigners. Okay, they worry. The reason why is because they know foreigners like him are drunks. They get themselves into problems, and then they cause problems for everyone else, and then they spread rumors that aren't true, right? So a lot of the locals here, they will actually look out for drunks without drunks even knowing it. And then they'll talk amongst themselves and they'll be like, hey, La Gringa or El Gringo, or, like they'll say the person was drunk, like, blah, blah, blah. So they already went to Anna's house and they're like, hey, your Gringo, he's really drunk and you might, want to watch over him. He just fell and banged his head pretty bad. He might need to see a doctor. Well, Anna, of course, she felt responsible. Not responsible, but, she felt like, who else is going to help him? So she went and she knocked on the door. And when she knocked on the door, he was probably already passed out. He didn't answer. So the next day, he ignores Anna. Anna goes to him on the street. He's walking on the street and, he's going to the doctor because he has to get himself patched up or whatever. And she's like, are you okay? And he's like, leave me alone. Leave me alone. You're just the same as your people. And she was like, oh, okay. And she left him alone. Well, that night, he's out at the bar, of course, with his hand was all bandaged up too because he had scrapes all over his hand. And, his head he had to get he was a mess. Okay, it was too late to put in stitches, so they tried to put some surgical tape. He was just a mess. And that happens often here. I'm not putting down the foreigners. All I'm saying is there's quite a few that get themselves into problems like that. And then so that night when he was at the bar, there was a new woman. He never saw her before. She was a person that lived in Santiago. She came here because she was going to be a working girl for the weekend. When she got here, she decided that she was just going to go to the bar first and have a couple of drinks before she went to the casino at the end of the night. And she met Tom. Tom said, "Hey, why don't you come home with me?" They went home together and they were having a good time. And next thing he knew, she robbed him and she left. He never saw her again. He never saw her before that. He never saw her after that. But she did rob him and she left. Now, you see, the moral of the story is this. If you have a Dominican that's a good person and they watch over you and they look out for you and they are loving you and you are paying them nothing and speaking to them rudely, there's going to come a time where they're going to get tired of you because they're not your dog. They're not your servant. So, my advice to you is to treat people with the kindness that you would want to be treated with. Do your best to be humane. Do your best to be loving, caring, and show appreciation. Because when the stakes are down and everything is done, that person is going to be there for you no matter what. And guess what? It's not often that you're going to find someone that's going to clean your poo and find your wallet and not take a cent. So, Anna, she deserves a lot of love, a lot of prayers. So I'm asking you guys, not only those who have been to the Dominican Republic and love it, but those of you who are planning on coming and never been, to please send prayers out for Anna. Imagine a rainbow all around her, hugging her and healing her. And imagine her meeting people that want to offer her the fruits that she deserves in regards to her labor. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Cerise. This is Storytime. Please take a moment to subscribe and hit that like button. If you have any questions about coming to the Dominican Republic, I call myself a one-stop shop. I can help you out with rentals and also airport pickup, drop-off, buying land, selling land, or just getting yourself around the island. Take care, everyone. Huge hugs, loads of love, big blesses. By the way, I'm looking forward to your comments down below because I know you guys are going to have some great things to say about Anna. Take care, everyone.